Of course, there's always room for them to f*** it up in MK11, but I believe that faith is earned, not freely given. And I think NetherRealm does deserve the benefit of the doubt here because they earned it through MKX.
Boy, do I have egg on my face right now. I'd like to start by addressing a few concerns I've seen in regards to the video on MKX's LGBT representation. I wasn't suggesting that Melina's orientation is a result of her desire for acceptance or that orientation works that way in the real world. Granted, a character convincing themselves they're a different orientation out of desperation could be an interesting story to develop. I think what I was getting at was that a more open orientation makes sense to give to that type of character, same with a character who uses seduction for their own ends like Tanya. And that's not to imply that bi people are promiscuous or devious, just that a seducer character has more story opportunities if they're bi. I also wasn't suggesting that the lack of explicit claims of Jin being gay was what made it good, or that a good character can't have their orientation be an important part of who they are. The player's ability to ignore or miss the reference isn't what I was talking about. It's that the game made Jin a character distinct from his orientation and didn't feel the need to bash you over the head with it or use it to market the character. If they were to be more explicit about it in a later game and make it more prominent while still giving him other stuff to deal with, it can work. In retrospect, Nails may have been a tad hyperbolic, but MKX did handle the subject matter a hell of a lot better than most media before or since, and it laid the groundwork for a more in-depth, more explicit exploration of his orientation in the sequel. But MK11 has no LGBT characters. Melina is dead, so fair enough, even though the time travel gives them license to bring her back easily, but Tanya and Jin are also missing and no explanation is given for them, which is really strange for Jin. There is one intro where Lau tells Cassie that Jin returned to the White Lotus, but that just raises the question of why he wasn't defending the temple when Garrison friends attacked, and why he wasn't in the Shaolin army at the end. Any explanation where he's not in the areas we visit in the story would be enough. I'm not even asking for him to show up, especially since, given how boring or even creepy and dark a lot of the hetero interactions in this game are, maybe it's for the best those three sat this one out. Now, I don't think it's a huge knock against the game for not having them. A character doesn't deserve to make the cut just for being a minority or to be immune to death for that matter. If they offer nothing unique to gameplay or story, their slot can be better utilised by someone else. But this game just seems to exude an unearned smugness about the franchise having a gay character in it despite him not being brought back here. Characters mention Jin a fair bit in intros where they talk about how cool he is and call him Kung Lao's nephew instead of cousin for some fucking reason. But what I really find frustrating is this intro.
You know of Kung Jin's interests?
You sit in judgment, Kung Lao?
Of my family's shameful treatment of him.
My issue with this intro is that it feels like the team wanting to get progressive points for having Kung Lao voice disgust in his family's mistreatment of their gay relative, but without having to put in the effort of actually depicting said relative. It's possible the writers were making an earnest attempt with the character list they were given, wanting to address and confirm Jin's orientation even if he's not around. Maybe they were working within the limitations of still getting the game released in certain homophobic regions. But to me, it really doesn't come across that way. I also question how Raiden from the time of MK2 knows about Jin's orientation when he's super young by that point and most likely hasn't discovered his sexuality himself yet. Hell, some intros seem to suggest Jin's not even been born yet, so how does Raiden know? And Lau talking about such a sensitive topic with Raiden seems a little strange to do right before a fight, and also disrespectful to Jin's privacy unless we establish Jin has been open about it himself. Something like this maybe.
Where is Kung Jin?
He's on his honeymoon with his husband.
Well, I'm glad he's comfortable with it.
This would imply that he's open enough about it that other characters discussing it is okay. Plus, it avoids the bog standard gay character's life is fucking awful because everyone around them hates them for being gay storyline that seems to be the one plot characters who are gay are allowed to have. Letting him be happy defies that expectation and gives his arc of seeking acceptance some closure even if he's not around. It doesn't fix the issue of it being an odd topic to come right before a fight, but sometimes you have to work within unfortunate limitations. As for the other intro, maybe if Lau was instead thanking Raiden for being there to make Jin feel like he had a place where he belonged when his own future self couldn't be there for him, it might have come across as more heartfelt because it goes deeper into Lau's mindset than the fairly shallow Kung Lao says don't mistreat gays message of the actual intro.
I hear you will guide Kung Jin in his time of need.
All mortals deserve a place to call home, Kung Lao.
Thank you for being there for him when I couldn't.
Another thing that might have made that intro come off a tad more genuine is if they added something to compensate compensate for what was removed. I don't think the writers get much say, if any, in which characters make the playable roster, so you shouldn't aim your frustration over the removal of the representation at them. However, they do seem to have a lot of control over the pre-fight intros, so why not use that? With all the random, out of nowhere, ultimately inconsequential relationships MK11 intros and endings introduce, like Eren with Scarlet and Natara, or Cabal with Serena, why are they all heterosexual? Why isn't at least one intro used to establish a character as gay or bi or asexual? Even an obvious and therefore underwhelming choice like Cassie or Eren would be something, and since it's not in the story mode, you don't have to actually make an effort to depict it beyond saying it exists. Maybe Eren is more open with his sexuality and alludes to a male partner of his. Maybe same-sex relationships were common among the Oshtek and Kotal Khan has had a male partner before. Maybe Cassie is exploring her own sexuality at this point in her life. Maybe Kuai Liang is straight up asexual or has a repressed sexuality. Or give some of that to Jackie, since while a character isn't inherently interesting for being LGBT, it can add some personality to a character, and God knows Jackie needs some of that.
How are things with you and Bob?
Actually, I'm giving things with Lauren a try right now.
I guess some things did get better after the 90s.
Of course, not everyone should necessarily be positive about it, and I'm not talking about having a villain be randomly homophobic.
What, are you fucking gay?
You could have a hero who's a bit unsure about it, not full on against it since that's way overdone and there wouldn't be nearly enough time to have a satisfying arc of acceptance, but just having them be a bit uneasy with the idea and eventually coming around to it would be enough. But not past Johnny, that's too obvious. Maybe if this was what caused the rift between Cassie and past Sonya, it might have been less frustrating to watch play out than Sonya reading half the file and getting mad about it like a child. Other interesting angles you could take a crack at include Tanya returning and exploring how Melina's death affected her. Maybe she works for Kronika to get her restored. Maybe she didn't actually love her and is pissed off that all her hard work amounted to nothing. Either way, she'd be a more interesting part of Khan's group than Scarlet, especially if Kitana has to convince her to join the Outworld Alliance, though I'm sure they'd have had Megabitch Twindell deride Tanya for her relationship with Melina. It's shocking that there's nothing like that here, but Scarlet's borderline incestuous feelings towards Shao Kahn get brought up more times than is necessary. And guys, I get that some of you want to fill the void of representation left after MKX, but getting upset that the devs didn't make Windwolf, Fire and Ice, Subsmoke or Cassie X Frost canon is a bit immature. Not every pair of friends or enemies wants to fuck. Same with Kung Lao and Jade while I'm at it. I've also seen people get mad that Cassie Cage, who in MKX was coded gay, didn't turn out to be gay in the next game. No, way to stereotype the looks of gay people. Honestly, this fucking fandom sometimes. Additionally, the lack of explicit LGBT characters doesn't mean the game is all heteros. Most of the characters don't have confirmed orientations at all, and I don't think any characters are actually confirmed as straight. Some characters are confirmed to like the opposite sex, but does that mean they're definitely not into their own? Not really. Melina wasn't shown to be into women from 1993 to 2015. You can't say that Scorpion, who has exclusively had eyes for Harumi since 1992, is hella gay for Kuai Liang and then claim the heteros far outnumber the LGBTs. You need better arguments than that. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is Mortal Kombat 11 Kano Sucks by Sonic Heart XD, because we all know that no one in the MK universe is gayer than Kano is for himself.
Oh, don't you just look peachy? If it's tail you want, we'll get along just fine. And I thought Cage was up himself.